So what if I told you that pretty much everything you think you know about negotiation is, well, wrong? We are about to dive into a totally radical new framework for making deals, and it comes from a truly unique strategic mind. Honestly, it promises to change how you look at every single negotiation you ever walk into. And this whole thing starts in a surprising place, not with some dry business textbook, but with this book, right here, written in Arabic. The title is just one word, love. But look at that subtitle. The biggest lie the world believed. Whoa. That's where things start to get really interesting. I mean, that is an incredibly bold statement, right? It just immediately makes you wonder, what kind of person writes a book like this? Who is the mind behind such a clinical, startling claim about, our most basic human emotion? Well, the author is Mohammad Bahareth. He's a best-selling author and a very high-level strategic consultant. But here's the fascinating part. He's a huge champion for neurodiversity, and he's reframed his own dyslexia and ADHD not as obstacles, but as actual superpowers for recognizing patterns and for creative problem solving. And this right here, this brings us to the central puzzle. How does the exact same mind that analyzes love as a logical fallacy also become known as the deal maker, the guy who architects these elite, high-stakes business deals? Well, the answer is that it's the exact same psychological approach. So, to figure this out, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that core idea, then redefine your role in any deal. After that, we'll learn about psychological reconnaissance, re-engineer what a win actually looks like, and finally, draw that super important line between influence and manipulation. Okay, let's dig right into the core philosophy of the deal maker. It all starts by just completely shattering a myth we all believe about business. This is the big idea, right here. We've all been taught that negotiation is this rational debate over terms, over price. Bahareth argues that this is just plain wrong. The negotiation table, that's not the battlefield. It's just a stage where the final scene of a play is performed. The real work, the actual winning and losing, that happened way before anyone even sat down. It's not a debate, it's a psychological operation. So if the table is just a stage, you have to stop thinking of yourself as an actor who's just reading some lines. You need to become the person who designed the entire stage, wrote the script, and is directing the whole show. This means you've got to stop being just a negotiator. You have to evolve into a deal architect. See, a negotiator argues over a blueprint that somebody else created. The architect, they design the reality itself, shaping everything so their desired outcome feels like the other person's own natural, inevitable idea. This slide, this shows such a critical power shift. Your typical negotiator acts like a vendor. They're kind of subordinate, they're seeking permission, hoping they get picked. The deal architect completely flips the script. They operate as a sovereign peer. They're not just hoping to get a deal, they are engineering one. They're not pitching, they are auditioning the client to see if they are even worthy. So how in the world do you get that kind of control? Well, you can't design a reality for someone you don't truly understand. The architect's main tool isn't persuasion, it's a deep, almost forensic understanding of the person sitting across from them. This is what he calls the reconnaissance phase, and it is everything. This is where the deal is truly won or lost. So forget about your pitch deck for a minute. The real prep work is a systematic, rigorous study of the other person's mind. The goal? To know them better than they even know themselves. Your job is to build a detailed psychological dossier. And I'm not talking about their company's balance sheet. I mean mapping their internal world. What is their ego attached to? What are they secretly terrified of losing? How do they personally measure a win? Is it just about money, or is it about status or leaving a legacy? These are the real emotional drivers that control their decisions, not the logical points they bring up at the table. So once you have that psychological map, you can stop playing the amateur's game of compromise. You can start architecting a much, much more sophisticated outcome. This is what's called the mutual victory reframe, and it just completely throws out that naive win-win idea. Amateurs, they just split the difference on price. Why? Because that's the only thing they see. The architect, on the other hand, understands the whole board is a multidimensional chessboard. They trade things that cost them very little, but are incredibly valuable to the other person's ego or their internal sense of success. Oh, this is a brilliant example. So a company wanted a really strict exclusivity clause, but the CEO on the other side just rejected it. He found it offensive, a restriction. So instead of arguing, the deal architect just reframed it. The exclusivity clause became a premium partnership. The restriction became a limited allocation of a super scarce resource. The actual physical reality was identical, but the psychological reality was totally flipped. The CEO got a huge ego victory, and the architect got the exact terms they wanted all along. Okay, at this point, you're probably thinking, wow, this sounds incredibly powerful, but isn't it just a fancy word for manipulation? And that is the most important question here. And the framework has a very, very clear answer. The difference really just comes down to intent and outcome. Manipulation is a short-term, totally self-defeating game. You extract value at their expense, and you burn that bridge forever. Influence, though, is about building a long-term alliance. It's about using your deep understanding to guide them to a decision that gets you what you want while also satisfying their deepest and often unstated desires for things like security, legacy, and respect. This quote, "This is really the core of the Deal Architect's manifesto. It's a declaration of sovereignty and a commitment to using power ethically. You're not in the room to beg for something or to trick someone. You are there as a peer, as an expert, to construct a new reality that benefits both sides of the alliance you're trying to build." So the huge takeaway here is this. The game isn't won at the table, it's won in the architecture. The most powerful person in any room isn't the one arguing the loudest. It's the one who did the homework beforehand to understand the psychological reality of everyone involved. So I'll just leave you with this question. In your next high-stakes conversation, are you going to be arguing over the details of the blueprint? Or are you going to be the one who designed the whole thing from the start?